Hi there, guys. So, just wanted to talk today briefly about the news that our former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has just taken a job with Goldman Sachs. So, before I get into the video, I'd be extremely grateful if you could subscribe to the channel for daily analysis of politics and the economy. And please like the video if you find what I talk about interesting at all. So, let's have a look at this then. So, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has joined Goldman Sachs as a senior advisor. Sunak, who was PM up until July last year, he'll be working part-time advising the bank's clients with his unique perspectives with his unique perspectives and insights on global politics and the economy, the company said. Yeah, I'm sure they did. He remains the Conservative MP for Richmond and Northallerton in Yorkshire, and he previously worked at the bank as an analyst in the early 2000s before he entered politics. Interestingly, Sunak's salary will be donated to the Richmond Project, a charity he founded earlier this year with his wife, Akshata Murthy, to try and improve numeracy across the UK. And then this is the interesting part. So the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, which must sign off jobs taken by former ministers for 2 years after they leave office, said Sunak's new role presented a number of risks that Goldman could benefit from unfair access to information due to his time as Prime Minister. He would not be allowed to advise other governments or their sovereign wealth funds for the bank, or advise clients that he had direct dealings while he was Prime Minister. He also cannot lobby the government on behalf of the bank. So I found this quite an interesting story, really. So bear in mind, as the story outlined there, that Rishi Sunak is still a sitting MP. You know, that is a job that commands a salary of £94,000 a year. So you'd think it was quite involved and would need someone's full attention, but not so apparently. Now, Rishi Sunak is so rich that he doesn't even need to take the salary from this new job at Goldman's. You know, he's a man with a net worth of around £730 million. And that takes us to a wider point here. So as of 2023 to 2024, around 1 in 5 MPs had second jobs or external earnings. Now, it's probably changed slightly for the better because a lot of the Tory party who would have been doing that sort of stuff, they were swept away last July. But the number is still going to be, it's likely to be still a sizable minority. If it's clear that Sunak doesn't need the money, and you could argue the same for anyone earning £94,000 a year, then what we're actually talking about is Goldman Sachs and other large companies getting into a sort of mutually beneficial relationship with our elected representatives. So, Goldman Sachs are obviously identifying an opportunity here. Sunak, he's got intimate knowledge of the UK power structure. And although he might not have current access to ministers due to the change of government last year, he's still going to be able to share sensitive information, on Treasury or maybe civil service decision-making processes. And he's going to be able to give Goldman, vital information on the inner workings of the UK PLC. And very simply, money can't buy that sort of information from Goldman's perspective. Sunak, on the other hand, he gets to refamiliarise himself with corporate life and start to lay out opportunities for himself for when he does finally call time on his parliamentary career. I think in terms of what this story tells us, nominally we still live in a democracy, but this sort of story gives us an insight into how our society really works. And effectively, you've got large corporations, infrastructure companies, banks, lobbyists, they're all able to buy access to our politicians, after which, policy is then developed in their interests. And in that context, the ordinary person, they just don't stand a chance. And of course, it being the UK, none of this is openly corrupt. This is just how the system works. It's a whole load of nods and winks essentially between establishment figures. So if I was part of a Labour government, or if I was Prime Minister, I'd do a number of very simple things to sort of bring democracy in this country up to date. I'd instantly have a ban on MPs having second jobs or consultancies, and I would have rules around having no landlords or second homeowners in Parliament. I'd have a written constitution which laid all that out. I'd maybe move Parliament to the Midlands to make it more representative geographically. Mandatory drug and alcohol testing of MPs, minimal MPs' expenses, only the absolute bare minimum, and then a ban on working in the same policy area for ministers for 5 years post-parliamentary career. And that's just scratching the surface. There's absolutely loads more that you could do to clean up politics in this country, which we need to do urgently. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you next time.